What would you do if your landlord told you to investigate your own bills yourself? Most people would grumble, pay up, and move on. But not these two, because when a property management company handed the problem back to its own tenants, those tenants handed it right back with receipts. Let's set the scene. It's the summer of 2023. A residential apartment complex in what seems like a perfectly ordinary neighborhood just got acquired by a brand new property management company. New ownership, new systems, new faces in the office. For most residents, change like this is annoying at best. You update your autopay, you figure out the new portal, you move on with your life. But this transition, this one was a disaster from day one. The new company decided to migrate all residents to a brand new online portal for paying rent and submitting maintenance requests. Sounds reasonable, right? Except, and here's the kicker, the rollout took over a month. A month of confusion, a month of broken access, a month where the only way to communicate with management was through a system that barely worked. And to make things worse, every single issue, complaint, or question had to go through that same broken portal. There was no backup, no phone line, no swing by the office, just wait. Our main character, let's call her Alex, had been living in this complex since September 2022. And before that apartment, she'd lived in two other units in the same complex over the previous 3 years. So when she says she knows how her bills are supposed to look, she's not guessing. She knows this place like the back of her hand. On August 2nd, Alex logged into the new portal to pay rent, routine stuff. But when she pulled up her utility breakdown, water, trash, sewer, common area fees, internet, something stopped her cold. Her water bill was $91. Now, if you've never tracked your utilities that closely, that might not sound alarming, but for Alex, who had been living in that complex for years, the water bill was always somewhere between $30 and $40. Always. Sure, rates go up, but gradually and usually at the start of the year. Not in August, not like this, not nearly triple what it used to be. Something was wrong. She didn't panic. She didn't assume the worst right away. She did what any reasonable person would do. She reached out to the property management office and politely but firmly asked what was going on. The response she got? A masterclass in corporate deflection. The assistant manager essentially said, "That's the water utility company raising their rates. Nothing to do with us. We have no control over it. Full stop. No investigation. No apology. No, let us look into this. Just not our problem. Good luck." Alex wasn't satisfied, so she did what any smart person does when something feels off. She called a friend. Her best friends, let's call them Cole and Phoebe, lived on the other side of the same complex. Same management company, same utility billing structure, and when Alex described what happened, Cole pulled up his water bill $120, double what it normally was. Same sudden spike, same mid year, out of nowhere increase. Cole immediately went to the management office himself and asked the same question Alex had asked, and he got the same non answer. But then Cole asked something more pointed. Are you going to investigate this? Because a spike this big in the middle of summer with no warning, that's suspicious. The office employee's response? Casual, dismissive, almost laughing. You can look into it yourself if you want. That's not really our job. And right there, right in that moment, something shifted in Cole. Because here's the thing about Cole, he's a data analyst, not a hobbyist, not someone who just likes spreadsheets. Finding patterns, asking questions, and pulling on threads until the whole thing unravels, that is literally what he does for a living. And when someone tells a data analyst that investigating suspicious financial discrepancies isn't their job, well, they just made it his. What started as a confusing line item on a utility bill was about to become something much bigger. Because Cole wasn't just going to call the water company once, he was going to call them, email them, chat with them, and document every single response. He was going to cross reference billing records, pull public meeting minutes, and build a case so airtight that the property management company's own regional leadership would have no choice but to act. And what he uncovered? It wasn't just an overcharge, it was a trail of negligence, cover ups, and unanswered red flags that stretched back further than anyone realized. A fired financial manager who tried to do the right thing, a utility contract that had been quietly switched without notice, and a local office staff that, when pushed, couldn't keep their story straight. Oh, and somewhere in all of this, a stolen car, a shooting on property, and a manager who told a resident that her car getting stolen was a test from God. Yeah, we're going there. Stay with us, because this story is just getting started. Cole didn't waste a single day. The moment that office employee shrugged and told him to figure it out himself, Cole went home, opened his laptop, and got to work. And the first thing he did was go straight to the source, the water utility company. He didn't just call once, he called multiple times. He sent emails. He used their live chat. He wanted a paper trail and he wanted it airtight. And every single time, whether it was a different representative, a different channel, a different day, he got the exact same answer. We never raise rates in the middle of the year, and we definitely don't raise them by that much. Your complex is telling you something that isn't true. Something isn't right over there. You need to take this up with them. Read that again. The utility company, the one that the property management office blamed for the increase, was telling tenants point blank that they didn't do it. Cole kept going. He dug up the water utilities public board meeting minutes, the actual documented record of when and how rate increases are planned and approved. He found the data. He cited it, and then he sat down and wrote a letter to the property management company that was, by all accounts, meticulous, detailed, sourced. The kind of letter that makes it very clear the person writing it isn't going away. But the water bill wasn't the only thing in that letter, because while Cole had the momentum and the audience, he made sure to include everything that had been going wrong since this new management company took over. The gym access that Phoebe had been waiting on for nearly 3 weeks, she'd gone into the office, been told to set up an account, been promised an access email within 1 to 2 days, and then silence. No email, no follow up, no gym. Then there were the gates. This is the part that genuinely rattled Alex. Twice, twice, she had nearly been hit by a car on the complex property, not on a public street, inside the complex, because drivers were entering through the exit gate the wrong way, with no barrier stopping them. When Alex looked more closely, she noticed something unsettling. There were signs posted clearly stating that spike strips, those tire shredding barriers that only allow one way traffic, were installed at the exit. But the spikes were gone removed, and nobody had told the residents, nobody had updated the signs. People were still reading those signs, assuming the protection was there and nearly getting run over because it wasn't. So Cole's letter wasn't just about a water bill anymore. It was about a pattern, a management office that deflected, dismissed, and disappeared every time something went wrong. And he sent it and then waited and waited and waited, no response. So Cole did what you do when emails go nowhere. He went back to the office in person, and the response he got this time somehow managed to be worse than before. A staff member casually suggested that if he wanted answers about his utility bills, he could call their utility billing company, a company called UBVest, himself. Again, telling a tenant to do the management company's job. Again. But here's the thing, Cole called. Because of course he did. And what UBVest told him stopped him cold. As of mid July, UBVest no longer had a contract with the complex. No announcement, no notice to residents, no transition communication of any kind. The billing company that had been managing their utilities for years had been quietly dropped right around the exact time the water bills spiked. And nobody, not one person in that management office, had bothered to tell a single tenant. Cole went back to the office. Again. And this time, he managed to get a new piece of information. The complex had switched to a new utility billing company called Conservice, effective August 1st, 2023. So he called Conservice. and Conservice confirmed they had only just started working with the property on August 1st, which meant they had zero historical billing data. No records of what residents had been paying before, no baseline, no comparison, just a clean slate conveniently wiped of everything that came before. Convenient, isn't it? Cole circled back to UBVest, trying to get his hands on historical records, the kind that would let him actually compare what residents were paying versus what they were suddenly being charged. And this is where things stopped being just frustrating and started being genuinely alarming. UBVest escalated his request to their financial manager, and she had a story to tell. She told Cole and Alex that she had personally flagged the water billing spike to the property management company's local manager, by name. She had told them directly, something is wrong with these numbers, this doesn't add up, and by law, this needs to be addressed. She never got a response, and shortly after raising the concern, UBVest's contract with the complex was terminated. Let that sink in. The billing company's own financial manager tried to do the right thing, tried to protect the residents, and the property management company's response was to cut ties entirely and bring in a new company with no historical records. Alex and Cole looked at each other, or, well, probably over the phone, and both had the same thought: this isn't a mistake, this is a cover up. And so they kept pulling the thread. The more they dug into how the water bill was actually calculated and distributed across all the units in the complex, the more the numbers refused to line up with anything the management office had told them. The discrepancies weren't small rounding errors, they were shocking. The kind of shocking that made you go back and check your math 3 times just to make sure you weren't the one making a mistake. When they pushed the office staff for explanations, real explanations, not corporate non answers, the mood shifted noticeably. Staff members who had previously been dismissive were now visibly irritated, annoyed that these two residents weren't just paying and moving on like everyone else. Eventually, someone in the office said the words that actually worked in Cole and Alex's favor. If you're not happy, take it up with the corporate office. So they did. Cole compiled everything: every email, every chat transcript, every phone call summary, every billing discrepancy, every unanswered question, every dismissive response, and he sent it, all of it, to the corporate headquarters. But here's what he also included. Because remember, this wasn't just about a water bill anymore. At some point during all of this, Phoebe's car had been stolen, taken right off the complex property, and when she brought it up to the local management office, the security failure, the lack of proper gate function, the fact that someone was able to steal a car from inside the complex, do you know what a manager said to her? Have you considered that maybe God was testing you? That's a direct quote from a property manager to a resident whose car was stolen. And that, along with something even more serious that Cole included in his report, was about to make corporate's response very, very swift. Corporate received Cole's email, and within 24 hours they responded. Not with a form letter, not with a thank you for your feedback. We'll look into it. A real human response. Acknowledging the complaint, acknowledging the documentation, and stating clearly that they were going to investigate, fully, personally. And then the regional manager picked up the phone and called Cole herself. Now, Alex wasn't on that call. She heard everything secondhand. The moment Cole called her right after it ended, but the way she described it, you could tell this wasn't a routine customer service conversation. This was someone in leadership who had read through everything Cole sent, understood exactly what had been happening, and was not happy. The regional manager started the call with something the local office had never once offered in all of this: a genuine apology, not a deflection, not a "we're sorry you feel that way," a real direct acknowledgement that what had happened to these residents was wrong. And then she got into specifics. First, the office staff. Every single employee at the local property management office had been terminated immediately. Not reassigned, not written up, fired. The manager, the assistant manager, The staff members who had spent weeks dismissing, deflecting, and stonewalling residents who were asking completely legitimate questions. All of them gone. Within what sounded like hours of corporate reviewing Cole's documentation, the regional manager specifically addressed the moment a manager had told Phoebe, whose car had been stolen off the property, that maybe God was testing her. She called it absolutely unacceptable. She didn't hedge, she didn't soften it, she used those exact words and made clear that it was one of the most egregious things she'd encountered in her review of the situation. Second, the gates. Remember those spike strips that were supposed to be there according to the signs still posted on the property? The ones that had been removed without notice, turning the exit into a two-way hazard that had nearly hit Alex twice? The regional manager confirmed that a repair date had already been scheduled. Spike strips would be reinstalled at the exit within the week. Done. No more arguing. No more, that's not our department. Third, the water bills. The regional manager assured Cole that she would be personally overseeing an investigation into the utility billing situation for every resident in the complex. Not just Cole and Alex, not just the people who had complained loudly enough. Everyone. The discrepancies that Cole had documented, the suspicious timing of Ubivest's contract termination right after their financial manager raised concerns, the total absence of historical billing records at Conservice, all of it was going under the microscope. And then she told Cole something that reframed the entire situation. She said she'd had no idea that a resident had been shot on the property. No idea, because the local manager had never reported it to corporate. Not the shooting, not Phoebe's stolen car, not the broken gates, not the spike in utility bills that their own billing company had flagged as legally problematic. None of it had ever made it up the chain the way it was required to. Think about what that means for a second. There is a person, a resident, someone who lives in this building, who is supposed to be safe in their own home, who was shot on the property. And the management team's response was to not tell anyone above them, to keep it quiet, to handle it, or more accurately, not handle it at the local level and hope nobody noticed. That is not a billing error. That is a failure of basic human responsibility, and it never would have come to light, not officially, not at the corporate level, if Cole hadn't written that letter, if he and Alex hadn't pushed, if they hadn't taken figure it out yourself as a challenge instead of a dismissal. Within a few weeks, the regional manager confirmed the complex would have an entirely new staff, people sent directly from corporate headquarters, not locally hired. A clean slate, real oversight, actual accountability. The call ended. Cole called Alex, and for a moment they just sat with it. They had started this because of a $91 water bill, a number that was wrong, a number that bothered Alex enough to make one phone call, which led to another call, which led to Cole getting involved, which led to dozens of calls, emails, chat logs, billing records, public meeting minutes, financial reports, and a comprehensive letter that landed on a corporate regional manager's desk and changed everything for an entire apartment complex full of people who had no idea any of this was happening. Because that's the part that's easy to miss in all of this. Cole and Alex weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for the neighbor who didn't know they were being overcharged, for the resident who assumed the spike strips were still there because the sign said so, for Phoebe, who was told by a property manager that her car being stolen was a spiritual lesson, for the person who was shot on that property and whose story was buried by the very people responsible for their safety. They did the work that the management company refused to do, and the management company paid for it, literally, with their jobs. There's something deeply satisfying about that. But there's also something that should make you a little angry if you're being honest. Because how many complexes out there have residents who don't have a call, who don't have someone with the skills, the time, the tenacity to pull on every thread until the whole thing unravels? How many people are quietly overpaying, quietly accepting dismissals, quietly living with broken gates and missing spike strips, and management teams that have decided accountability is optional? Most people, when they're told that's not our problem, believe it. Cole and Alex didn't. And because they didn't, an entire building of people got a better management team, fairer bills, functional security, and justice for situations that should never have been buried in the first place. That's not a small thing, that's everything. So the next time something feels off, a number that doesn't add up, an answer that doesn't quite make sense, a shrug where there should be a solution, don't let it go. Ask the question, make the call, send the email, be the person in your building who pulls on the thread. Because sometimes one phone call, one $91 water bill that just feels a little too high, is all it takes to blow the whole thing open. If this story hit different, you know what to do. Drop a like, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you never miss the next one. Because trust us, there are plenty more stories just like this one, and we are just getting started.